Welcome back to Wake Up America. I'm Alex Kramer. It's now time to get you caught up with some rapid reactions. Well, as the war in Ukraine reaches day 20, it continues to dominate headlines and trending topics, with world leaders offering their consistent thoughts and their progress. Beginning right here with President Biden pledging more support to Ukraine, their soldiers, and their refugees, saying, "We will make sure Ukraine has weapons to defend against the invading Russian force. We will send money and food and aid to save Ukrainian lives. We will welcome Ukrainian refugees with open arms." And then Ukrainian President Zelensky tweeted his condolences for the American journalist fatally shot by Russian forces. May Brent's life and sacrifice inspire the world to stand up and fight for the forces of the light against forces of darkness, as well as a written letter to his family where he mentioned how thankful Ukraine is for people like Brent. And then the president of the EU, Ursula von der Leyen, tweeted the EU's latest sanctions package, saying this: "I welcome the fast adoption by EU member states of the fourth package of sanctions against Russia. This will further cripple Putin's ability to finance this unjustified war. The EU will keep up the pressure on the Kremlin." Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has meetings set up with the Nordic and Baltic partners of the Joint Expeditionary Force. The purpose, he says, is to bolster European security and ensure we emerge from this crisis stronger and more unified than before. Rob?
All right, Alex, thank you. The EU agreeing earlier this morning to a new package of sanctions against Russia as the war rages in Ukraine.
Joining us now to talk about the latest with the EU is current GB News presenter and ex-member of European Parliament, Alex Phillips. Alex, welcome to Wake Up America.
Good morning.
Alex, good morning. Nice to have you on. So a fourth round of peace talks didn't yield much yesterday between Russia and Ukraine. Another round is going to happen today. With that, we've seen a fourth round of sanctions. These sanctions targeting specifically energy, steel, and defense sectors. What do you make of this? Will this change Vladimir Putin's resolve at all?
I don't think it will, because frankly, Vladimir Putin would have priced in sanctions. You've got to remember that when he annexed Crimea in Ukraine, the world was very slow to react. And what actually happened as a result of that, sanctions were put in place, but trade continued because a lot of countries in Europe essentially mainland Russian fossil fuels, and they've not been able to diversify their energy sectors to a point in which they're able to cut that off completely. We've seen some progress with the halting of Nord Stream 2, which is the gas pipeline that was set to run from Russia to Germany. But there is still a heck of a lot of exposure of European economies to Russia and an inability to move away from essentially that umbilical cord that is pumping money still into Russia, despite sanctions being taking money out of the economy with one hand. But Russia also has a huge amount of reserves at its disposal. And if it's able to continue selling some of its fuels at a very low cost to countries outside of the EU, it's got enough to keep ticking over. And frankly, I think Vladimir Putin has calculated that. The real pivotal player in all of this will be China. They have just set up a strategic relationship, particularly focusing on the importation of energy from Russia to China to prop up the gargantuan Chinese manufacturing economy. And the world is now looking to Xi Jinping to see if he is prepared to put sanctions against Russia and if he is prepared to essentially cut off that life flow of money into the Russian economy to make sustaining this war increasingly difficult.
Yeah, that is the big question, Alex. Speaking of reserves, the latest sanctions package could also freeze the assets of business leaders who support Russia and ban top firms from raiding Russian sovereign debt and companies. How much do you think Russia has in reserves to withstand all of this?
I think it's got about estimated between $300 and $600 billion worth. So it is sitting fairly pretty. Now, that's not going to last interminably, but it is enough for the time being for Russia to be able to fall back on, as long as there are other countries in the world who are continuing to buy discounted fuel. And one of those countries, again, is India. Now, what we're seeing exposed is essentially a really naive and myopic lack of trade alignment in the West, where we have opened our doors to countries like Russia and China and not held them to the same standards as we have done each other. At the moment, there's no proper trade deal between America and the EU. There's no trade deal between the US and the UK. And it's things like this that we need to start re-examining, because where we have been creating this Gordian knot of interdependency on essentially bad faith actors, at the same time, we've been failing to utilize what we can share together as the Western community.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex Phillips, so great to have you. Thank you so much for your insight today.
Thanks, Alex. Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.